Salute, my Quickclassics friends. Hope you're all doing well on this Friday, July the 2nd, 2021. If you like the content, please click like, subscribe, and share. I thought today I would talk a little bit about the classical influence on the founding fathers and the founding of the United States of America, given that it's July the 2nd and 2 days away from Independence Day. Well, it should go without saying that the effect of the classics, in particular the Greek and Roman, but also the Judeo-Christian classics, had a tremendous impact on the institutions of our republic. Um, there were a number of avenues of influence from other cultures, antique and otherwise, um, in addition to the ones that I've named. There were even Native American influences from such sources as the Iroquois Confederacy, and also Anglo-Saxon law had a tremendous impact on our political and legal institutions. But it goes without saying that the sort of general body that we refer to as the Founding Fathers, which would have included Washington, Jefferson, Adams, Hamilton, Franklin, Madison, John Jay, Patrick Henry, George Mason, those kinds of people. It should go without saying that all of these people were students of the classics in one form or another, owing not only to their own interests, but the nature of education in the colonies during the mid-18th century, early and mid-18th century. Education, of course, started in the home. It was largely classical in nature after that, whether it was in the church school where you had children from the community learning in basically the church hall, one room, or the upper echelons of colonial society who were able to afford private tutors to give a thorough classical education, which would have included both would have included some bits of Greek and Latin, but more of the private tutoring would have certainly included Latin and Greek, because at one point in time these were requirements. Good grounding and versing in the classics were requirements for admission into colleges and universities. So classical education was very important. Now, taking a look at some individual founding fathers, we get a better sense of just what role the classics played in their lives and the legacy that's left even to us today. Even, there are things like our public civic buildings that retain the sort of Roman tetrastyle temple look to them. You can go downtown to a lot of courthouses in small towns in Texas and see that very same design preserved. But getting back to the founding fathers proper, people such as John Adams frequently made references to the classical world, and many of his legal briefs. Um, and his wife was no shirker when it came to the classics either. She was quite the accomplished Latinist. Um, Now, Benjamin Franklin had some schooling in Latin, and in fact, at one point in time, Franklin's family wanted him to study to become a minister and enter the seminary, but he certainly had other plans. But Franklin was also a student of the classics and the ancient world, and certainly had a literary facility with the classics. But of course, probably the most well-known student of the classics amongst the founding fathers was Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson was an ardent student of Greek and Roman literature. He was versed not only in contemporary languages but also in a number of ancient languages, including Greek and Latin, um, and even Anglo-Saxon and a little bit of Hebrew, if I'm not mistaken. Um, just to illustrate how conversant he was and what facility he had in classical languages. One of his favorite pastimes was to read Homeric literature, the Iliad and the Odyssey, in the original Greek. Um, so uh, that taken with the many references to classical authors like Cicero, like the Greek historian Herodotus, give you a good illustration of um, just what facility Jefferson had with the classics. His protege, James Madison, the father of the Constitution, was also an ardent student of the classics, following in his mentor's footsteps. Um, and again, all the allusions to classical authors and figures in Madison's writings are testament to his thorough classical education as well. George Washington was also a student of the classics, although he had no, um, might have had a smattering of Latin. Washington started off as sort of second tier Virginia gentry, and so he also didn't quite get the education that his older brother Lawrence did. Uh, but he filled in the gaps quickly by reading a lot of things in translation. And Washington, interestingly enough, speaking of classical allusions, was often compared to Cincinnatus. And Cincinnatus was a legendary farmer, citizen of Rome, patrician, who was also a general. And in a time of war during the regal period, he was called on to head the armies of Rome and basically have the power of the state at his hands. And when the war was over, he handed the power back to the state and returned to his farm to resume the life of a farmer, citizen farmer. And so Washington sort of played this role fittingly in the Revolutionary War and the early Republic period. People did see him as a kind of American Cincinnatus. Um, I should also point out that um, the founders are very clear about the style of government um, that we were to have, a more refined, modernized republic, not exactly the Roman Republic with all its flaws, but one that represented uh, equity as best an institution of man could do. As opposed to democracy. Now, our republic is based on democratic principles and process, but a true democracy, as all the founders as students of the classics knew, largely from the Greek examples, a true democracy was only possible on a city-state scale. So, in Athens, Thebes, etc., etc. And votes of the assembly, the ecclesia, could be swayed by a simple majority. So you basically had a kind of loosely controlled mob rule under the auspices of the leader of the president of the ecclesia, the Boule Council. But even in a lot of cases, the ecclesia was comprised of aristocrats, which is something that the founders did not want cropping up in our republic, which is why they were explicit about our nation being a republic. And to this day, we are not a democracy, we are a republic. We elect people to represent our interest, ostensibly. So I hope this gives you an idea of just how influenced by the classics the founding fathers were, what role the classics played in our founding. And if you're interested in studying the classical world, there's a 4th of July sale on through the 4th of July. I'm offering my certifications through the Institute of Biblical Anthropology for $125 a piece. And those that might appeal to people interested in the classics would be biblical anthropology and the new Mediterranean civilization certification. And of course, the other certifications are available too, as your interest might direct. And if you want to become more adept in the Greek language, I'm offering the Rudiments of New Testament Greek, Koine Greek, for $225 as well. You can email me at professorburton@yahoo.com if you want to take advantage of these sales. Remember, they run through um, July the 4th, and for a few more hours today, my all my titles in my catalog are on sale for 15% off. And there are a number of sources on Greek and Roman classical history in that catalog that may be of interest to you. So, thanks for tuning in and listening. Everybody have a good weekend. Happy 4th of July, and Godspeed.